Hey folks, Rich here. Welcome back to the RCINFORMER YouTube channel. In today's video, I have a sort of long-awaited, long-prepared setup guide for the AEROFOAM MB-339 coming from Banana Hobby. Now, I've had a lot of flights on the airplane, and I have things set up a certain way, and I've had a lot of questions about it. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is show you some of the changes, upgrades, modifications, things I've done to make it work well and make it fly well. And it flew well perfectly from day one, but had little things with it that I've adjusted, modified, so things fit better and things work better. So we're going to talk about all that today in this video, and yeah, I got a clipboard, a list of stuff to kind of go through. So anybody that has this, that wants to know how I set things up and how I made things work, this is the video for you. So I'm going to do my best. I'm sort of one man, one camera, one-handed doing this. I want to start off with one thing as far as pilots go. Banana Hobby has a nice array of pilots, okay, to put in this thing. And in their website, they do have these little pilots that fit in there perfectly, and they can be installed from underneath. These little panels come out. I don't remember the exact name, but I'll put a link in the description below so you guys can check out, you know, which pilot actually fits, but it's this guy right here. So I'm getting ready to put this guy in the back, and you know, he's going to go in there next. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with the interior of this thing first, and then we're going to go to sort of the fan, and then we're going to talk about some exterior items. So this plane is awesome. It has beautiful latches. This one's spring-loaded. This thing comes off, and again, that's how you get at your pilots to change your pilots out. So let me put that canopy aside. And what we're going to do is start off with the interior, give you guys sort of an overview of my whole setup and what this thing looks like. So to get a little more light into the subject, I'm going to release this latch and get the back cowling off, the cover off, and I'll show you that, how I set all that up, and we'll get into that, you know, kind of just right after this. So let me put that down there, and we'll get on with the beginning part. I'm going to be referencing my checklist as I get kind of down into this. So everything's plugged in and everything's working right now. So I have everything set up. I want you to see the layout of the front section of the cabin here. So you can see I have my, what I did was initially was I drilled a hole right through here, okay? This is a 7/8 inch hole, and I had, well, what I did is before putting it together, or you have to take it apart to drill a hole that way and to drill a hole that way, and what I used for that was a Forstner bit, okay? It was very easy to do because you're drilling through a little bit of light ply and you're going through some foam, but you basically drill a hole through that bulkhead and you round the corners so it's not sharp, and we do the same thing to the other side. Actually, let me go around here. You go do the same thing to this side. So on the back side of this, you could see the hole right there where those wires come through, because there was so much stuff in here, tables and bulkheads and things, and I removed them, as you can see, and made this kind of open and clear, so there's a lot of space for batteries. So, but it started off up front. I didn't do this right away, but it took me some time to sort of figure this out. So anyway, that hole right there, mounting your receiver up front, allows you to make this happen. So, and you can see I use the SPEKTRUM AR 8360T, you know, stabilized receiver. So I am using stabilization in this, which works beautifully in this. And you can see I have one antenna taped right here. I have the other antenna taped right there. And using, I think it was a 24-inch extension that I ran back here all the way along the wall, okay, back to there. And I ran that receiver right up there, and I Velcroed it to the top. Okay, and then there's my other two antennas. So I have an antenna going that way, I have one going that way, and I have two going that way, 90 degrees to each other. So we're covering pretty much every end of the spectrum, or every angle. So along with this, the main receiver with the satellite, you're going to get plenty of coverage. So you want to lay out your receivers something like that, so you have, you know, it's a big airplane, it's relatively expensive, so you want to kind of protect it with, you know, diversity of antennas. So now what I'm using, and what I also did, was I moved my BEC right here, and you can see I just Velcroed it to the wall. I probably am going to cut these wires eventually, make them a little shorter, because they are kind of long, but you can see I routed the wires along there and isolated them, so nothing is tugging on those wires down there, because those are your output wires. These are your input wires, and you see I taped these to the wall, so there's nothing tugging on those, and you want nothing to tug on those wires, and you want nothing to tug on those wires, because if you fracture or cause, you know, a fatigue of those solder joints. If those break off, you're going down maybe. So fortunately, I mean, this BEC has two dual power inputs, and it has dual outputs, two inputs and two outputs. And the inputs, I just use simply these lithium batteries right here. And I'm using two LIPOs 1300s, and I'm going to take this out so you can see the floor and you can see the arrangement of this thing. So I used two of them. I think the newest BECs that are coming for the MB only have one wire, input wire, and that's really all you need is one battery. You don't need two, but these original ones, and I don't know, maybe the turbine versions have two, but anyway, mine had two, so that's how I wired, how I put mine together. So I used two of these Venom 1300s, and between batteries like this, you know, I always use a little bit of shelf liner because it keeps them from sliding on each other. And the reason I'm showing you guys this right now is so you can see how the layout of the floor is. And this is the existing floor. All I did was use my shelf liner like I typically, you know, use. And, you know, I cut out the lightning holes, and two of these batteries for redundancy fit perfectly. You typically will use 100 maybe to 200 maybe milliamps out of one of these packs, so one of these is enough, you know. So but for redundancy and the way this came, you know, I used two batteries. So, and again, I got a lot of wiring there. I may cut those down because if you notice here, I did cut down the power wires for the speed controller because they were long. Okay, these power wires were going clear to the front of the plane out here, and I just didn't need all that. So I shortened them because the batteries sit right there, and really that's kind of the layout of this whole thing. But you see all the wires go through that hole, that 7/8 inch hole that I cut with the Forstner bit, and that's kind of the arrangement of this. So I was trying to spread this all out because all the electronics were back in here, and I know a lot of guys are complaining that there's not a lot of space in here. And yeah, there isn't with all that stuff in there, but for the turbine version of this plane, you know, there's fuel in here, and there's tanks, and there's all kinds of you know, EECs and all kinds of stuff. But in the electric version, you have a speed controller, and that's about it. So, you know, the layout I have going on here is I put everything against the wall. So I took my gear control modules, my braking modules, all that kind of stuff, and I Velcroed them against the wall, okay, to get everything over to one side, because you don't need to have it here. It's kind of in the way here, and it just makes more space for the battery. I don't know, some of them I've seen bulkheads here. I know there was a table right in here, okay, that went across that side, and I took that table out because it made more sense to me to just put the receiver up front, get it away from all the high power electronics and stuff. And then this thing is, you know, what I did is I double-sided taped that. You can secure it any way you want. Okay, what I used for that was 3M tape, which I had here somewhere. Let me grab it, sorry about that. I used this 3M double-sided foam tape that's super, super strong, and I might have even used like 2 layers of this stuff. So this is what I used to secure it. So that's what that's attached with, okay, because obviously you don't want your receiver to be floating around. And here it's away from all the high voltage, and of course it's aligned nicely and it's sitting flat on a table. So let me consult here as I get to the back of the airplane with my, we talked about the batteries, the BEC, Forstner bit. I'm going through my checklist here as I'm looking through this. Cooling holes. There was really not any intake cooling, okay, for the battery. There's plenty of exhaust, but there's nothing coming in here. So what I did, and you might have noticed, is there's a hole right down there, okay? And I'll show it from this angle, and you can see when I get the battery wires out of the way, that hole goes clear to the bottom. There's my finger coming through there. So what I did is I cut that because I figured that would be some good intake cooling to get coming up over the batteries, okay? And then it can all go out the back. The fan will obviously suck through there, and it should draw air through here over the battery. So I wanted to have some form of cooling. There is a little bit of gaps, but there are up front here, but there are doors, okay, and the doors do close. So now let's take a look at that from the underside here. I'm going to kind of bank the airplane just a little bit. Hopefully we can take a look. But here's the underside and what that looks like. All I did is after the airplane was together, I just, you know, cut a hole in there. It's foam, so it cuts through pretty darn easy. But that at least gives us some sort of an intake hole. Hopefully the factory will in the future, you know, do something differently, or maybe kind of cooler looking. But for the meantime, I just put a big hole in there. I used a tool, okay, or like a hobby knife and just a drill bit. I think I started with a drill bit. But if you have something that is like this, okay, just a dowel rod of some sort, this is a carbon rod, with some sandpaper, that's kind of how I did that. And you can clean that up and make it however you want. But anyway, that's just a cooling hole I added, and it seems to keep the batteries cooler, because the batteries, you know, do have a tendency to get hot if there's no intake air over them. And in the front of the airplane, there's nothing to let air in. So I was hoping there would be something here or here. But anyway, this seems to keep the batteries cool. So it's a good way to, kind of something to add to keep the whole thing cool. So let me level this off a little bit. I did change my battery floor out a bit, as you guys can see. Let me bank the airplane a little bit here so I can get to it here a little bit better. Let me move some things here. Sorry about that for the roughness. Sorry, I'm an Army of One today here, guys, doing this myself. So, but you can see here that with these shortened wires, okay, and some things I used to make this floor bigger or better, is I cut a couple of extra strap slots here. It only came with this one in the middle. I added this one and this one because I fly my planes inverted and do some aggressive stuff with them, so I wanted to have some extra slots. All you have to do is take a drill bit and just drill, you know, in a line, and then take your hobby knife and cut those. Use some sanding tools and bars and stuff, and you can cut some nice slots. So I put one there, put one there, or that was the original one, and then I put one over here as well, okay, to accommodate, and I put them all the way at the edge, so it'll accommodate a wider battery, and then I put my shelf liner and all that. One item to note about the battery compartment, if you guys decide to add you know, additional straps, you need a relatively long strap, and what I'm using are these Apex straps. These things, and the length specifically is 400 millimeters. These are very long straps, but they'll accommodate two 6S 5,000 packs, and here's what they look like. So if you guys need to know where to get large straps, I'll put links in the description below that you guys can check out. They're available at my Amazon store. I put them in there so you guys can check it out. So that's the straps that you want to use for this. Again, about 400 millimeters in length. Another thing too, there is a speed brake on this airplane, and I'm going to show you how that operates here real quick, because that's sort of important. Sorry about that, guys. That brake comes out from right here. As I extend that, you can see that coming open. Well, the problem too there for batteries is that there's a speed brake arm that can kind of get in the way right down there. Okay, and that's how it opens and closes right there. So, and that arm was long, like a 3D style arm, and it doesn't need that much, you know, that length, okay? So what I did was I shortened the arm, okay, moved it in, and now it doesn't stick out into the battery area as much, okay? So that'll give you some more space in the battery area, okay, to put, you know, batteries. This is the elevator line that I ran across here and down here, okay, and then everything else is on the other side, okay? Everything comes up from underneath. I made my own battery floor right here and glued it down, sorry, my ESC floor I glued down there, so it was just ahead of the main spar that you can see there. And that makes a ton of space. So I've heard people say, oh man, you can't put big batteries, or you can't put a 5,000 in there. You can't. Well, you can. You can actually put a 6,000 or something. Typically this plane does like shorter batteries and taller batteries, sort of squattier batteries. But just to give you an example, you know, here's a SPEKTRUM 5050C, and it's a little tight in there, you know, I got to admit, a little tight. But if you set up your floor right, get rid of all those tables and trays and all that other stuff that's in there, these fit in there super, super easy. So I'll show you how those look, and they could even go back a bit. So when I first got my airplane, I didn't actually have blind nuts here. They had nuts to put on the front of this wall. So I think they've gone back to using blind nuts for these. But I stuck these blind nuts in there. And all you have to do is just, if you don't have them there, stick them there. And those are the 4 screws. You know, there's 2 there, 2 there, so there's 4 altogether. And as long as you have the blind nuts there, you know, it'll be nice and flush, and you can actually get your batteries all the way up, you know, against that front wall. So these are SPEKTRUM 5050C G2s. There's plenty of room to actually move these forward and back. Yeah, it's tight, but now there's a lot of room, or better room for it, I should say. And again, if you shorten that arm down there for your speed brake, which the plane doesn't really need a speed brake, you know, you'll make yourself more room down there to fit. So now to show you a couple other batteries, just so you guys will kind of get the gist of this. This is what a roaring top Okay, 5,000 looks like in here. So as long as you get these in there correctly, or you configure your battery area properly, okay, you will not have a problem in putting, you know, some fairly large size batteries. You can see these fit with ease, but in order to make them fit with ease, I had to configure this thing, get rid of all the tables, bulkheads, all that stuff, put the electronics on the wall, because, you know, your fuselage here is curved and the inside is concave. It's curved in there. So you've got lots of pockets against these walls, you know, to put all sorts of stuff. So let me yank these out of here. Sorry for the instability here, folks, but I'm trying my best to show you all this stuff as best I can. But you can see the walls have recesses in them. So wires, modules, whatever you got, I stuck them on the sidewall and it seems to work, you know, perfectly there. So just to show you how much space you actually have in this airplane when everything's configured properly, I thought I'd mount a few batteries to show you all how that works. You can see there's a fair amount of space on this side, same even on the other side, even as far down as you can see, even as far down as the, if you look very carefully, you can see the speed brake arm down there. There is enough space, okay, for that arm to move by if you shorten it. So that's kind of the key to you know, getting batteries in here where, you know, they can be all the way up front or they can come all the way back even to the speed controller. Now this isn't a gospel setting, folks. You could put that speed controller even farther back if you wanted to. You could put it up on a shelf. I mean, you could really do a lot of things. This is just a configuration where I found it works really well. So and notice I'm only using 2 straps. I'm using the front strap in this particular case, you know, just to keep the wires, you know, from going back. And notice the shortened wires, you know, they're not going to go anywhere kind of near that fan. Our cooling hole up front is unobstructed, okay, and we have lots of air to come in, clear over the batteries, because there's going to be quite a big vacuum in here, and it's going to pull air, you know, over the batteries nicely. So again, I could even inch back a little bit to the speed controller with some even slightly larger batteries. So let me throw in a larger pack so you can see what that looks like. Here's how it looks with Admiral 6050C Pros. 843 grams on these. Your regular Admiral 5000s, let's see, are 705 grams, and these always, like I said, these fit great in there. And then you've got, you know, my favorite battery of all time, the Roaring Top 5570C. These weigh in at 805 grams. So, and these are actually a hair slimmer, I'd say, probably than the 6000s. But you can see there's plenty of space for this. So I've got cooling up front, okay, the cooling hole that I have up there that I cut into there, plenty of room for that. And then in the back where the speed controller is, we can still shift it back a hair if we had to, but there's lots of movement here. So you can see I have it towards the back because these batteries are a little heavier, and I can put either 2 straps, lighter batteries, I can run them up front and run the front 2 or all 3 straps. And our speed control, or sorry, not our speed control, our speed brake down there, you can see the arm moving down there. It still has plenty of room, and it does clear as long as you know, shave it down and cut it to a smaller length like I was just talking about. But I've also noticed here that I really never paid that much attention to, but for larger batteries, there's a little chunk of foam sticking out right here. This is actually an alternate or opposite side servo tray intended probably for the speed brake underneath, but there's only one on one side, so I'm probably going to cut that off, shave that off, so these batteries can actually be mounted at a slight angle, okay, just to get the battery away from that speed brake arm, to get them away from there, and that would give you a little bit more flexibility. Turning your battery side to side or having it catty-cornered a little bit isn't a big deal. It won't change, it shouldn't change the lateral balance of your plane. As long as you have it centered and turned, it should equally distribute the load really well. But that's just an idea to show you that you can put fairly decent sized batteries. One battery I have not tried, which I may try in here, is the 7000 Spectrum packs. Okay, now these weigh a little bit more, so I'd probably have to check out, you know, the CG 914 grams. But they're tall, and that's one of the things about this battery compartment. It's not as wide as we'd like it to be, of course, you know, but there's plenty of space on both sides. But it's very tall, so you can put, you know, stuff. You can put taller, thinner batteries up in this really, really easily. So as you can see, as long as you configure the battery floor, you know, in this airplane, or the battery area, this compartment, as long as you configure it properly, you know, you can put big batteries in. And, you know, my ESC up front here doesn't have to be there. What I'm thinking later is if I do put bigger batteries and it's a CG issue at all, I'll probably run these wires back through. I'll probably make a hole here, run them back here, and maybe put, if I need to move these batteries out here, is put them put them back here. And also I'm finding, like I said, that the newer BECs that are coming from AEROFOAM apparently are only having one input wire. One guy was telling me online the other day. So, and that's fine. Again, you only need one battery for the airplane, okay, which will kind of cut down the weight. But mine seems to fly well in this configuration with 5 to 5,500 packs here, even with these packs up front. But again, these could even be moved somewhere to the back or somewhere in here. Anyway, there's a multitude of things that you can do to set this up. But as you can see here, as long as you configure this area correctly, okay, the two areas correctly, there's plenty of space for big batteries, tall batteries, and as long as you get it right, everything will work in there and fit in there just really nicely. That's about it for the front part of the compartment, and I hope that helps everybody out. And you can kind of see, I'll give you a bird's eye view of what it looks like, but it's actually quite roomy as long as you configure it properly, and that's with receiver here, ESC here, modules against a wall, one or the other. You could probably even reverse this and put the receiver and all that on the other side, but this seemed to be a good way to separate the high power here, the low power here, get the receiver up here with everything, and now we got tons and tons of battery space, especially once we shorten that, you know, that speed brake arm that's down there. So anyway, I've been flying it this way and it flies beautifully this way. So anyway, what we're going to do now is just move on to the back area here and show you guys the fan area. So now, one of the issues with this fan, okay, it is a change sun fan. That's the stock fan, okay, and it has tons of power. It's a really good fan. I mean, it moves this thing through the air. If you don't believe me, check out the videos over there. I think I was even outrunning like Avantis and stuff when I was at the Jet Jam with this thing. So it's got plenty of power and all that, but there's one issue with these change sun 105mm fans, and they've been around a while, is that there's really not a great way to tighten it. And you can see the way I'm running mine and all my change sun fans that I run like this, I have the spinner cone off of it, partially because I don't totally trust it, but also because, you know, it's plastic, okay, so I really didn't want to have it in there. Plus, you could see those two holes on either side, and that's what I used to tighten it. And that's the problem with this fan, is that there's not really a good way to tighten it, and any stock change sun fan you get that has the collet drive here, okay, this is a collet tight drive, as you guys probably are aware, anyone that has this knows. So when I first powered this up, my fan slid off the shaft and came forward because it wasn't tightened enough. So when you try to tighten that nut that you see right in there, as you begin to tighten it, the fan, the whole collet begins to turn on the shaft. Now you notice I'm missing a fan blade. This is the actual one that came off of this airplane. I was only about a quarter throttle and it bit into the wood here, and I had to do a sort of a repair job. You can see kind of down in there. I reinforced the wood top and bottom after it kind of damaged that. But I wasn't moving very fast, so at the time I only was about quarter throttle when it came off. So you got to tighten this fan somehow, and here's how you do it. Normally, if you try to tighten this and you don't have any tightening holes or anything to lock it down with, you're trying to hold these blades, and then you're starting to bend blades and you just can't get it tight enough. So what I did, this is my way of doing it, and it works, is I drilled two 3mm metric holes, and I did that through the backside first. So you can see where those holes are, okay? I'm not necessarily recommending that you do this. I'm just saying that this is what I did to lock it, because this is the only way I could figure out to get something to lock this fan down. I've sent this to Banana Hobby. I've sent this to the factory and said, hey, we need a fan lock for this thing. So after drilling those holes, I made this. I fabricated this. So this is just 3mm metric screws, okay, going through, you know, a piece of aluminum, and it's basically a spanner is all it is. And what I can do is I can lock these in here, okay, and before installing the fan, now I'm showing it to you this way because this is just a scrap fan, okay, that I have kind of laying around. This is my sort of damaged fan, and I'm using this just as a demo tool to show you that before I install the fan, or anytime I get one of these 105 change suns anywhere, I will do this modification to the fan, okay, so I can use this tool, and then I can really tighten this thing down, because the fan will not move, and you can tell you're getting the fan really tight. That's the only way I've been confident enough to know that this thing is secure in place. Also, you want to balance this thing. So when you get these, you want to take them off, balance them, put them on a balancer, and these inside areas right here, I may or may not throw a picture up here, but these inside areas right here are perfect for putting weight along the outside to balance this. So that's for another video on how to balance these things. It's pretty simple. There's probably tons of videos on there how to balance, you know, EDF fan rotor. So, but if you balance this thing, it's actually liquid smooth. So, but you need a locking mechanism. I'm hoping the factory or Banana Hobby will make something similar, but this is just to give you an idea. This is how I tighten my fans. That's why I'm pretty confident that the Change Sun fans are awesome, because I tightened them down. So, and it did, you know, when my fan came off, it did a little damage. Like I said, it cut into the wood. My upper compartment, or my upper hatch, which I'm going to sort of pull over here, I had to get this thing to fit on here, and a couple of techniques that I used to get this to fit, because what happens is when you first get this thing, you have to install this cowling on here, and you put it behind the lip, as you could notice there. Okay, it's glued in behind the lip, and what I glued it with was some foam tack. Why foam tack? Because foam tack's really strong and it'll hold it on there, but you can also remove it. Okay, so if you use CA or use some other harsh glue, you may not be able to get it off. So you wanted it to be on there tough enough, you know, so it doesn't get sucked in, and you want it to be, you know, something you can release and remove it later, because you may have to take the fan out, you know. So it's glued in down here, right here. It's glued in along this wall, and then of course I glued the inside and put it on. I just put some tape on here, okay, ran some filament tape here, just to kind of help keep it in place a little bit better. But this configuration has worked out really nice, and you can see from all the way down here, way down here, how, you know, how it just funnels all the air in. Now, when I first put this fan in place, and I went to go put this hatch on and put it down, I couldn't even get it to close. So I had to push on this little by little and find out where on earth this thing was touching. And you can see here where I had to do a little bit of carving just with a Dremel tool. It took me a few seconds to do it. All of this that you're seeing right here is damage from when that fan came off. Okay, so when it came off, it chewed up this a little bit, it chewed up this a little bit. And fortunately, like I said, I was only about quarter throttle, so that's why I did minimal damage. At high speed, it might really do some significant damage. Also, these lips right here, here and here, we're touching here and here. Oh, that's my radio telling me I'm not doing anything. Hang on a second, let me just reset that, because we're going to get to that here in a second. So, but you can see I needed those notches in there to fit, okay, and to get this thing down into place. Also, what was happening is my tongue in the back here, okay, was pushing down, and it wouldn't really go in there without putting a big old dent, okay, in the thrust tube. So what I did is taken some sandpaper on just another fan housing I had sitting around. I may stick another picture of that up here. I just sanded this tongue, okay. It used to be flat on the bottom, but I sanded it till it was round. Okay, now you can see how nicely it fits in. Okay, it doesn't do anything to that tube. The tube stays nice and round, and now we can kind of secure this in place. It's a positive, really positive lock. And when you get down in there, you can kind of see up in the upper corners there. I'll try to point that out if I can, but kind of right here and kind of right on that other side, those little notches in that corner, and I'll zoom in on it. That right there is that little edge that I left there in front of the cowling to help keep the cowling in place. So you can see I had to do a little sanding to get that to fit. Again, keep in mind, my fan is a factory kind of early sample type plane, so you know, mine has probably more mods than the current production version of this thing. So you know, just keep that in mind, that you know, I had to do those little things to make it fit. The current production version might fit better now. It probably does. So again, mine's sort of a rough early sample, but anyway, those are the mods I made to make this thing fit. So, but you got to get the fan all in place, get everything set up. And then once everything's established where it's supposed to be, then you're going to fit this. And if there's any issues, again, mine's an early sample, so the ones you're getting, you know, the current production versions might fit better. But you can see it's a, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful fit. So also when it comes to the spinner cone, you know, one thing I want to mention, you don't need to run it with that cone on there. Okay, I'm running mine without it, and I've never had a problem not running cones. And in the past, I have removed cones because I've seen some cones that are like non-metal. I've seen them disintegrate and go into the fan or crack or something if you over tighten or something. So I don't seem to have any problem running them without cones. There's maybe a little less cool, less, you know, smooth airflow going in there, but but I'm confident that the cone is not going to break apart and go into the fan because it's not there. So anyway, that's just my logic. It's how I've been running them for quite some time. Now, when it comes to installing the fan, I designed my own sort of shoehorn type tongue to mount on the underside of the fan. I'm going to put a picture up here so you can see what that looks like. And the reason that I did that was because I wanted to be able to seal the hole, okay, in the bottom of the thrust tube. And every one of these planes that comes from the factory seems to have a sort of a slightly different hole at the, you know, in the lower end of the thrust tube at the base of the fan at the bottom, where for the wires to run through. So, and that's sometimes a fairly large hole, and all the thrust coming out of the back of the fan, some thrust can be lost. It could go down through that tube, down through that hole. It could damage the thrust tube and such. So what I did is I designed, as you can see in these pictures, is I put my own sort of, like I said, it's like a shoehorn or like a tongue, which is a piece of Lexan that I used, you know, foam tack to glue on there because I can always take it off. It's not permanent. And using some tape around it, which you can see again from all these pictures here. What it does is it acts as a seal for that hole, and using an O-ring and also sanding the back edge of the fan, because the carbon or the glass reinforced plastic that the fan is made out of has very sharp edges. So I'll put a picture up here of how I sanded the edges to protect the wires, because once you install this fan, you don't really want to take it out very much. You want to kind of leave it in there. But by putting that tongue mechanism on there, and putting an O-ring and sanding the edges of everything, it protects the wires, it seals the hole, and it allows you to take the fan, install it in and out much easier, and seal that hole underneath. What that does is it allows you to have maximum thrust out of the back of this thing, because it seals everything up. There's no gaps, there's no holes anymore. And it seemed to be a really good way to install it. So if you ever have to take the fan out, you can, you know, take your cowling off here, your scoop here, unscrew your fan, you know, slide your thrust tube backwards a little bit, and then you can pull your fan straight up and out, and that tongue and the wires and everything will come out with it, and it just makes it easier to install, uninstall if you have to, but mostly it seals all the gaps and makes maximum thrust out of the back of that tailpipe. Now here's just a quick view, okay, down the tailpipe, just to show you a couple of things, you know, relating to that tongue I put in there. The biggest thing to understand about this thrust tube in the back is that if you seal up that lower section, okay, with that tongue design that I made, okay, it'll block that hole. If you sand the edges of the fan, it will protect the wires. And then when you need to remove your fan, it'll all come out with the tongue. So anyway, that's the basic concept. You make a shoehorn type tongue, you know, for the back of that fan. It seals up all the gaps, and again, you'll get maximum thrust without any leaking, you know, coming out of this pipe. And you know, that may be partially why I'm getting tremendous power out of this thing. And that's I found a really great way to set this thing up. Also down in here, you can see where I just tie wrapped my wires down to the grate down there, the intake cheater hole, and that seems to hold everything, you know, in there nicely. Once again, short wires on here. You can see how short I went with those, and then I made my own adapter. This is my own kind of one that I soldered and made and everything. So yeah, the canopy sometimes, this is one other comment, small thing. A lot of these canopies don't come perfect, okay, from the factory. Sometimes you've got to trim the back end of this thing. So if it doesn't come quite right, you know, you may have to trim this. This one I just had to trim the plastic because they left excess plastic there. I don't know why they did that, but my L39, and there's one of my L39s right there. It was similar, and in fact my first L39, the camo one, I actually pulled the whole cowling or canopy off, just because you can peel this off, guys. This isn't like super glued in place. You can peel the edge of this, peel the whole canopy off, and then you can kind of remount, okay, this thing, put the foam part on the airplane, and then reglue this if it's not in the right place, so if you need to reposition. But I only had that with one plane, so you know, this one fit pretty good, but you know, I needed to trim the canopy just a little bit. So now let's get to the exterior of this thing and show you some of the things that, you know, kind of I worked with and kind of changed and did and whatever. So as you guys may have seen from the video I had at Jet Jam where I flew this thing, I had one initial problem. They may have already fixed this at the factory. I'm not 100% sure. But the problem I had with the nose gear was that when this nose gear comes down, mine was getting caught, okay? And I'll cycle it here for you so you guys can see how it looks when it's going up. There's a nose wheel going up into the well. It hits those that little stopper thing, and then it pulls the doors up. Okay, and what was happening is there's a flange on here that my nose wheel was getting stuck on, and it wasn't coming down all the way. So all I did was, and this was in that video as well, so all I did to this nose gear, and you can see when it pushes through right here, I filed this area away and just made it, as you can see, just cut away a little bit so it's flush here. So when that wheel swings down, it doesn't grab that rib there, I guess you could call it. And when it would grab that rib, it would get stuck on the door. So it's a small change, but it will keep your nose gear from getting caught up in the well. So now this might be something they've already changed at the factory because I showed them this. And I ended up doing a nose wheel landing in that video, which again, I'll put that video in the upper right-hand corner so you can see. My first landing I did with just the main gear. The nose gear didn't come down. And my doors were scraped here just a little bit. But check yours, and in this area right here, where the nose wheel has a tendency to catch, okay? You want to just make sure you sand a notch right in here, and that's it. If you do that, you'll never have those things snag. And I did it on the other side as well, that you can see right there. So that's a small thing you can do to remove some material, so those things, you know, your nose wheel doesn't snag on that. So now I have not had that problem with my main gear. But I did the same thing there too, just to prevent possibly it from happening. So I'll open this up and you can see that notch I put right here, right in there. And you can see when the gear goes by it, it's pretty close. So if you shave that down, okay, you'll never have a snag of a door coming down on that rib. So again, I think they might have changed that at the factory. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to show you the other side so you can see what that looks like as well. You see that little notch I put right there where that wheel comes down? And if you do that correctly or put it in the right place, it's running up against my canopy. There we go, sorry about that. You'll never have a problem with that. So I'll show you that one more time so y'all can see what that looks like. If I can zoom in on there, let's get that down. And there's that notch right there. And you can see where that wheel passes right over that area. There it is. If you just cut away a little of that rib or that little reinforcement area, you will not have a problem with that. So anyway, that's just something I did. I don't know, I don't think that would be a problem, or hasn't been a problem for me, but I did it just to kind of clean this up. Another thing, I always tell people this landing gear has tons and tons and tons of E-rings on it, okay? If you lose one E-ring, okay, you're done, okay? Your gear can come apart and all that, and all these electric jets and jets are that way. So notice I've got a little glob of foam tack on there. So stick a little bit of foam tack on each of your E-rings, guys. You've probably seen me here to say this a million times before, but that will keep, okay, your gear from, you know, from losing a pin, because if you have an E-ring come out, you lose a pin, gear comes apart, that kind of thing. So that's just sort of almost like a sort of a poor man's kind of safety wire kind of thing. And then horns. A couple things to check, okay, on the horns. Okay, right here, every one of these horns is metal. They're super nice, okay, but there's a plate on the other side, okay, that, and I'll show you that right here. Here's the plate on the top side, okay? It taps into that. Those screws are self-tapping and they tap into the plastic. There's actually 4 holes that, you know, one on each corner. So check all of these when you get this airplane and you set it up, because I found, on this airplane in particular, I think I found 5 of them. 2 of them were like back here, one was on another, one was on another. But what they was, the screw went in at an angle and it didn't engage the plastic piece on the other side, okay? And if it's not engaged, this could come off. So check all of these on all the surfaces. So your ailerons, okay? Your flaps are actually glued in, okay? But your rudder, okay? you want to make sure that all 4 of those engage the plastic on the other side. Same thing with your elevator. There's 4 of them right there. Make sure all of those, okay, engage the plastic on the other side. I can't stress it enough, because if you have one of those come off, if somebody at the factory just didn't screw it on right, you know, you're sort of in trouble. You can lose that and lose that control of that surface. So also horns, okay, and I heard some of the newer airplanes are actually coming with nylon horns. To me, that's fine. All my L-39s have nylon horns, but this one just happened to have aluminum, which may be from the EDF world or from the turbine world maybe. But in either case, they're long arms. Take a look at the aileron. Same thing, long arms. Noticed I used the one that's second from the inside, okay? Because if you don't use those, I mean, you get 3D like control throws, okay, out of this thing, and the surfaces don't really move, you know, all that much. So also what I did, just because I'm kind of crazy with this stuff, I actually tapped the holes. I used a 2mm tap, and I actually threaded and tapped this aluminum hole, because they had actually drilled out the outer one, they drilled out the next one, and then this one they left alone, like the one above it you can see. So it was really small. So I found that opportunity to use a 2mm tap. I tapped threads into that just to make it a little more secure, and I took that 2mm screw, okay, and literally tapped it into the other side. So even if the nut was not there, which is a nylon lock nut, okay, it would still stay threaded in place. So I just did that for security. Also, this is kind of how I have my, you know, control throws and everything. You can see if I move my ailerons, there's plenty of space for these to move, okay? And the, you know, the control throws don't need to even be that much. So, but anyway, the proper hole, okay, for your ailerons is as far in as you can get it, and preferably you can see I have the second from the innermost hole. Same thing on the elevator, second from the innermost hole. And on the rudder, I think I did the same, second from the innermost hole. And I think on some of these too, these screws, I don't remember exactly, the 2mm screws may have been too long. So actually on most of these large jets, I cut about a few millimeters off and just made them shorter, because they were kind of sticking way out. Kind of like this one, and I think I left that one because I just didn't get around to cutting it off. But the screws are long, so if you want to cut them back with a, you know, with a Dremel tool or something, you're probably good to go. So, and then of course on the flaps, I needed more throw, it seemed like. So I did go with the, you know, and I think it might have been because of the rod length. I think that's what it was. The rod length was actually relatively short. So you can see here I used the second from the outside hole, and actually you can see I had tapped the second from the inside hole, simply because that was the one I was originally going to use. But then again, I think I found out that, like I said, the rods were a little short, so I didn't have the length to go with them, so I went to the outer hole, and that's fine. It'll still work. It'll still work for you that way. So those are the holes that I used for this thing. A couple other small details I wanted to point out on this thing. It comes with some really nice antennas here, and here's one on the tail. Okay, and this comes out only because I didn't glue mine in yet, just because I'm a slacker. Sometimes I don't put antennas on because I break them off. But these I'm going to put on and paint. I don't know why they didn't paint them. And this little half curve shape deal, the reason that they did that is because there actually is a spar going through here. So that's to accommodate, hopefully, sorry about that, that's to accommodate, there's an actual spar running through here. That's why these planes are so awesome, because they actually run a spar that actually plugs in down there, and you've got a really nice solid vertical. Also, another antenna here, I need to paint this white. Again, I've been a slacker on it. I'm going to paint it white, probably glue it in there, but I sometimes don't put antennas on, because I'm always ripping antennas off. You know, there's two kinds of antennas, pitot tubes, those that have broken off and those that will. So I'll paint that white, but I just want to point out there's some real nice details on this airplane. And those are some of them. So there's additionally, and I'm going to show you this right here, there's an additional antenna on the other side, and I'm working out a fix for this now that I have not worked on yet, but this plugs into the bottom. Problem with gluing that on is once you glue that on, you will not be able to lay this plane on its belly. So that's why I hadn't put it on there. I'm going to paint it and stick it on there, come up with a way to make it magnetic or something like that. But anyway, it came with these clear antennas. I would imagine by now the ones you guys are getting probably are painted. I don't know, mine was an early one, so for whatever reason they did not, you know, didn't paint all those things, so I wish they had. So let me see, metal horns we talked about, trim the main gears, and second horn, tap, new plow. Okay, and that was it, guys. That's about it for the whole thing. I'm gonna wrap this up. If you guys have any questions, you know, please feel free to contact me directly. If you guys want a live show on this, I may even do a live show for people who got questions and answers. And of course, you guys can always contact me, you know, anytime you want. Ask me questions about this. And this is a phenomenal airplane. I mean, this MB-339 AEROFOAM from Banana Hobby is one sweet airplane. And, you know, they're making, as far as big jets go, AEROFOAM at Banana Hobby makes the absolute best one. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed here, my nose gear didn't come down that time. And what I've noticed with some of the, you know, the gear control sequencers is that if you throw the gear down and you don't get a gear that comes down, you got to either cycle the switch quickly, because it will send the signal to the gear that didn't come down and it will make it come down, okay? Or put the gear back up, let it come all the way up, and then cycle it all the way down. So I've found myself on occasion where, you know, my gear's coming up now, or let's say my gear, I put the gear down and maybe only one or two legs come down. What I find I have to do is cycle that switch really quick. And I've had that happen in a couple of my videos where you guys have seen it. And all it does is, and I hate reversing gear midstream while it's in motion, okay, but sometimes I found myself needing to do that because it sends a signal, okay, to the gear to kind of come down again. So if it binds or whatever, I haven't had really any problem with this MB other than that nose gear, you know, kind of catching, you know, where it did it when I was at Jet Jam. But for the most part, I haven't had any problems with this one. It's been great. So anyway, I hope that answers a lot of questions that you guys had, you know, about this airplane. It is an awesome model, by far one of the coolest ones I have, one of the best performing, and it flies like a fighter jet the way it's supposed to. So anyway, folks, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll put links for all the stuff I talked about down below in the description, so you guys know where to get this over at Banana Hobby. So if you guys use my links, it does support the channel. I appreciate that. As always, guys, more videos coming on this. I'll have videos associated with this airplane flying and everything, building, assembly, setup in the upper right hand corner. Please like, guys, hit the notification bell so you guys get alerted to more videos you know, like this, and flying demos and all sorts of stuff that I put out. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope this helped out. Thanks for watching RC Informer. As always, we'll see y'all next time.